Hello and welcome. I'm John Barry, the president of the American Australian Association, and I want to welcome and thank you all for joining us tonight. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which the AAA is located here in New York, the Lenape people. And as we come together for this virtual gathering, though physically dispersed, but together in our hearts, let's take a moment to recognize the traditional owners of the lands that each of us are living on and working on each day. I am very delighted, in fact, incredibly excited to welcome the wonderful, incredible speakers that we have tonight for a conversation on Indigenous art. The arts are a main pillar of our work here at the AAA, and the inclusion of Indigenous peoples in all of our programs, be it our graduate scholarships, our veterans, or our artists, is a core part of our mission. The AAA has granted over $12 million to over 800 Australians and Americans who have studied in each other's countries. The work behind me is titled My Country and was painted by 4 wonderful artists from the heartland of Australia: Imit Curley, Beverly Cameron, Kathy Marinka, and Janjeli George. And I wanted to bring and share their names and their work with you. During my time as ambassador in Australia, one of my most fortunate visits was to the APY lands, which I got to visit twice. And I also got to visit some of the APY art centers. And there I learned of the strong linkages between art, community history, and economic advancement. Jumpy sculptures, like this one, are not only wonderful sculptures, but they were used very effectively to raise funds so that there could be mobile dialysis trucks reaching Indigenous communities in remote areas. Now I get to introduce our speakers tonight. They are joining us from Adelaide, South Australia, and that is Sally Scales, who is a Pitjantjatjara woman who has worked with the APY Art Centre Collective since 2013 in cultural liaison, elder support, and spokesperson roles. In addition, Sally is the chair of the APY Council, a member of the Uluru Statement Education Committee, and also undertakes consultancy work for the Art Gallery of South Australia and the South Australian government. Skye O'Meara is the general manager of the APY Art Centre Collective and has worked in the Indigenous arts industry for the past 13 years. Skye was instrumental in driving renowned projects like Kulada Judah and the APY Young Photographers Program. She also managed the successful APY Gallery Pop-Up, which piloted the viability of the current APY collective endeavor. And now it is a great honor for me to turn over tonight to our moderator, a dear friend, Margot Smith, who is director of the Kluge-Ruhe Aboriginal Art Collection in Charlottesville, Virginia. The Kluge-Ruhe is the only museum outside of Australia dedicated to the exhibition and study of Indigenous Australian art. Margot has worked with the collection since 1995, having previously conducted field work in Central Australia for 2 years. She has been named also an honorary member of the Order of Australia in 2015. Margot, that was a well-deserved honor, and it is a great privilege to have you moderating our discussion with Sally and Skye tonight. Over to you, Margot.
Thank you, Ambassador Barry. I'm delighted to be broadcasting from Monacan country, and just want to pay my respects to Monacan elders past and present. And also just thank Ambassador Barry. Charlotte Barstow, who's his assistant, a former student of mine and a former intern at Kluge-Ruhe, and the team at the AAA for this wonderful opportunity. And just want to thank Sally and Skye for being our esteemed guests tonight. It is such a pleasure to bring you to perhaps to a different audience, but I know there are people tuning in from all over the world, from Australia, from here, to hear what you have to say. And I hope we'll have a really deep discussion about the APY Collective, the art from the lands, the growing national and international influence that your artists have, and how, in fact, people might connect with you and obtain artwork by the artists that you represent. So we'll go from question to question, but I wanted to just see if you wanted to do a little scoop around the gallery as we talked about, just to show people the space that you have there in Adelaide.
Margot, we might pay respect to the traditional owners here as well.
So for us, you know, we're on Kaurna country, which is they are the traditional owners of Adelaide and the Adelaide Plains. So for us, it's that deep connection to country that we always acknowledge, and we also want to acknowledge our leaders and elders on the APY lands who, you know, have put this little slice of APY here in Adelaide. We'll show you around.
Yep. Thank you so much. And I will say we follow you in that model of acknowledging the traditional owners. So appreciate you doing that.
So we've got some incredible works here by the beautiful Sammy Lyons. We've got some kulana, so traditional spears, and the boomerangs, not necessarily the ones that return to you. We've also got some more jumpy, which Barry showed at the start. We've got a little figurine here, little cuties.
So this is our current show, and the title of the show is Owankara, which means all of us. And this is, I mean, this is work from the 7 different communities in the APY lands. It's, we'll talk more about our model, but there's artists expanding the APY lands from Indulkina community, from Armada community, from Freegon community, from Pipladara. This work here behind me is work from Leah Brady, who was just shortlisted for is a finalist in the Wynne Prize at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, which is a very prestigious landscape prize in Australia. Mrs. Brady is one of the artists here in the Adelaide studio, which we'll talk more about a bit later on as well.
Thank you so much for that tour. That was awesome. And I think I noticed on the wall a painting by Sharon Adamson. Is that right?
Oh,
and I've got one right here. So want to acknowledge her. That's a Wannabe Jukurpa.
Yeah.
That's one of the paintings that we showed at Kluge-Ruhe. In fact, when she was here with Barbara Moore on a residency last year.
Margot, you know though that this work on our wall is Sharon's great-grandmother?
yes.
So Sharon's great-grandmother, Kukika Tiger, so Tiger Palpudge's oldest daughter. So you're absolutely spot on, but it's the current matriarch of that family.
Wow, that is awesome. I didn't know that, and I want to look into her work because I can tell it's a stunner. Okay, well, let's jump into our conversation. And, I wanted to first ask you, I think we need to set the table for people and explain what exactly the APY Collective is doing, and who you serve and how you do that. So give us your brief on who you are. Sally, you want to take it?
So the APY Art Centre Collective was started about 5 years ago. Well, first sort of rumblings of maybe 10 years ago. And really it was the elders getting together and actually saying, well, we need to have a better economic output for our communities, work better as a collaborative region, and really started to work in that traditional family sense. And so we work with our the art centres on the APY land. So when we talk about an art centre, it's sort of the studio space for artists in remote communities. It's, you know, art centres are also the agents for artists, artists who, you know, a lot of them are elderly. It's also a space where a lot of artists who've got disabilities have a place to thrive. And really it's where a lot of cross-generational teaching happens. It is always been an educational space for learning about techniques, but learning about Jukurpa. Jukurpa is our word for the laws, it's our word for Inma, it's our word for that cultural connection rather than dreaming or dream time, which I think is very small when you actually think about all of it. And it was really about saying, you know, we want more. And the main driver for my elders was saying, well, we need to have a space and an avenue for young and emerging artists, because if you're a non-Indigenous artist, there's lots of spaces and avenues for you to grow once you finish, you know, art school, and there's all that sort of stuff. But if you're an Aboriginal artist, you don't have that. You know, a lot of artists, Aboriginal artists are sort of recognised when they reach towards the end of their career, and that's when they hit their peaks and they're being finalists and they're being awarded shows and they have solos, and then unfortunately, you know, they pass away within 10 years of that high. And so for my elders, they were like, well, we want to showcase our young people from the get-go. We want them to have a long and successful career, like a lot of, like a Ben Quilty, like a, you know, John Olsen, like a Margaret Ollie. So, you know, having a long career as an artist and having that economic drive go back to the community. So, you know, having, it was what, 3 years ago, we opened our Sydney gallery, and it was just, for us, it's the 2 galleries about showcasing young and emerging artists, so making sure those artists who are in the first sort of years of practice and first few years of having, you know, not necessarily practice. There's a beautiful senior man who's, I love him, he said, I'm going to be an artist now. I'm retired from everything else. This is what I'm going to do. And I just think that's so beautiful. You know, Mr. Douglas did that at, you know, 65 or something. And he was like, I'm an artist, it's my turn now. And it's just like powerful works after powerful work. So really from working from that. And so, yeah, it's, I mean, I'm so incredibly proud of my elders, so incredibly proud of that leadership that I get to be around.
Yeah. Margot, I might add to this a little bit, just to, when you were talking about setting the table, I think about my friends in the US and the, you know, the mystery that is the desert that exists in the middle of Australia. So the APY lands is located, one of the communities, Armada community, is an hour and a half's drive directly behind Uluru, or you might have heard Uluru referred to as Ayers Rock. And in these communities, it is vast desert country. It's like another planet, really, visually. The country is so rich, red, and so startlingly beautiful, such a unique place. And each of these communities has between 60 and 400 Aboriginal people living there, and the communities have a school, a shop, a clinic, and an art centre. And so the art centre really is the hub of community life. It's a professional art making studio, but it's so much more than that, which Sally has already spoken to. But because the art centres are the only source of non-government income, and because despite the rich, vibrant, dynamic culture that Anangu live with, and the beauty of the country, it's also a place of significant social challenge. It's a tough life for Aboriginal people in Australia. There's all sorts of issues with higher rates of incarceration, food security issues. In the APY lands, there was a petrol sniffing epidemic in the 1980s that where a lot of lives were lost, and there's a lot of injuries and disabilities that still exist in APY communities because of the petrol sniffing epidemic. There's chronic health conditions, there's larger numbers of a range of disabilities there. So in this context, the art centres do so much more than provide paint and materials.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a space where elders have absolute support. It's a space where those with those profound disabilities have security. You know, they have emotional security as well as physical security. Sorry, that's just a phone at the gallery going. But it's also that element of there's a lot of organisations that come to those art centres to find out what's going on, because we know what's going on with all of our artists. We have eyes on, and it's a place of love, and it's a place of work, and it's a place of
cultural celebration.
Totally. I mean, my grandmother would be the oldest female artist in Australia. I mean, we think she's 99, 80, 98, so it's sort of, you know, can't necessarily pinpoint it, but she's the bossiest old lady you can possibly have, because she loves painting and she loves to sit and share her knowledge, and she's a boss. She is the boss.
Well, let me ask you this. So how does it serve the communities and the community art centers to have galleries in Sydney and in Adelaide? And what unique role do you all play in, you know, being located in an urban area? So go with that.
I might just do that. When we started the collective, it was, as Sally said, it was about the elders trying to get more out of their model, more economically, a higher economic return to community for early career artists, Margot. But it was also about the top tier part of the industry, so the highest profile Aboriginal artists across Australia. That's a space that's very rich for opportunities, always has been. These artworks have a very high price point. Those artists have rich opportunities to be able to use their platform as an artist to speak to their work and culture. And the elders were saying, you know, we'd like to see our younger artists and our early career artists have these opportunities as well. So, and also I think one of the you know, art centres are under-resourced, small, hard-working not-for-profits in Australia. So in Jala Arts in Armada community, there might be 60 artists working there with 2 wonderful young staff members running around madly, making sure that the artists have the support they need in terms of materials and the services, the operational services that they require within the studio context. And so beyond the day-to-day, it's really hard to engage in major projects or to support bigger business strategies. And so the elders said, if we come together, we can have an additional staffing structure and additional resourcing to grow our business, to grow opportunities, particularly for young and emerging artists. The APY Art Centres and most Central Desert artists benefit from some extraordinary galleries in Australia. There's galleries like our Caston Gallery in Melbourne. There's Tim Olsen and Olsen Gallery in Sydney, Olsen Gruen in New York, Aboriginal and Pacific Art Gallery, Short Street Gallery, Outstation Gallery. On the APY Art Centre Collective Instagram feed, you'll see some of the most brilliant gallery partners that the APY Art Centre Collective works with. What we wanted to do was to start to be the first platform, so to give artists their starting point, and then these artists will grow and move on to more established and prestigious gallery environments, really, and that's exactly what's happening. But in the meantime, it means as an emerging artist or an early career artist, the opportunities are still there to to come to the gallery, to celebrate your work, and to be a part of your industry, to make those connections, to do that networking that all artists love. And then when that artist is more established and ready, they'll move on to one of the amazing gallery partners that support the APY Art Centres.
I mean, another thing that an important thing for us was with our gallery here in Adelaide was having a studio space for a lot of our family members who've had to move for significant health reasons like renal dialysis, heart conditions. And so for us to have a space where they can come together, and that's why I say it's a little slice of APY. I mean, unfortunately, these artists are subjected to public housing, and so they're put wherever they have space, and so they get to come together. And there's so much talking, there's so much teasing, there's so much love, there's a lot of one-upmanship, but it's that space where, you know, one of the elders and one of the incredible ladies here said, you know, for her, before this gallery happened, before this studio happened, she was so bored of her life here in the city, because she was literally going from appointments back to her house, and she's like, I wanted to work, I wanted to do something for my mind and for my hands. And so for her, it's about that fulfillment as a person and the fulfillment as an artist. And, you know, one of the other ladies, Margaret Richards, said, you know, for her, when she paints, she's going back to her country in her mind, you know, and she's looking after her country in her mind. And, you know, while she's not physically there, she's there emotionally, and she's there while she's painting. And I think that's the incredible space for it. And, you know, when we talk about that opportunities for young artists, you know, you had the incredible Sharon Adamson there. Sharon's only in her early 20s. And so if it wasn't for the collective, if it wasn't for that regional support, someone like her wouldn't have had that opportunity from a young age to be over in the States having an incredible, you know, time with Barbara, the amazing Barbara Moore. So that's, you know, when we highlight and talk about the incredible young artists who have such an excitement when they find out their show is happening, they've got a piece in an exhibit, they're like, oh, I'm in our gallery. And so it's just sort of like, I'm in the APY gallery. And it's so incredible to see that. And then their grandparents and their family are so excited and saying, you're in the gallery. So it's an enjoyment around all of it. So yeah.
Also, I think the thing is, Margot, the model of the APY Art Centre Collective is really culturally appropriate, and this isn't. I mean, these are Anangu cultural values, but also people from big families might relate to it, where it's the all hands on deck, you know, yeah. where we can do a better job if we work together. So it's by the art centres working together with a bit of additional support in our own spaces where we can make our connections in Sydney and Adelaide, we can support the artists to enjoy more opportunities and that's where our program of support also exists to provide professional development opportunities for young artists who love the opportunity to connect with art schools and grow their skills and connect with other artists. And when Sally was talking about some of the higher profile non-Indigenous artists in Australia, a lot of the, like Ben Quilty she referred to before, a lot of what we're doing is about making the Indigenous art market more connected to the non-Indigenous space in terms of strategic marketing and a professional business model that supports artists at every tier and at every stage of their career.
That's great. It's so great to hear what you're doing there, and it's so important. I wonder, Charlotte, if we could pop up a few slides just to show, you know, a couple of the artists at work, and then let's just rest on that slide of the spears of Kulita Juta, because I wanted to. It's a big week in Adelaide right now, right? Fernandes opened up just yesterday. I would be there if I weren't here. And it was such a pleasure to be there last year and to be with you all in the gallery. There's so much going on. So, so this is the one that I thought we might talk about, because I know that you have worked closely with Art Gallery of South Australia and Tarnandy. And you know, this year it's a focused festival, I believe, on senior artists, open hands, predominantly women artists. I know there's a lot of APY artists represented in the festival. And viewers, also people who are on this webinar, you'll want to go look at the introductory film and then maybe check out the Tarnandy website, because you can see, I believe, the exhibition online. But another aspect of this is this, for the first year, Tarnandy is on tour. Right, so so this, well, an exhibition that was done in Tarnandy is over in France, opening this week as well. Is that right?
Today.
Tonight.
So tell us a little bit about that. And I do think that our viewers are going to want to, they need to, some explanation about this artwork as well.
So Untitled means many spheres, and so it was a project started by some senior men in the APY lands who said, well, we need to start making sure and make that our young men continue the practice of making spheres, you know, that cross-generational teaching, which is so important all the time for us. And so it started from that, and it was actually started in 2014 with a show in here in Adelaide. And then we had these variations of Untitled. There was an exhibit, we had a performance exhibit at the Governor's House in 2015. This image is from 2017. And you know, we also took Untitled to Switzerland last year, which was a 1500 sphere installation, which is in Foundation Opera in Switzerland, and that's 2 stories high, and it was a willy, so it's a I suppose you can say like a cyclone, tornado for Americans. And Untitled, you know, we've been working with the Art Gallery of South Australia and the Australian government to send it over to Brittany in France, which South Australia has a relationship with. I suppose you can say it's a sister state. And it really grew, and obviously with COVID impacting the travel of different things. And so we've changed it into this massive project where artists and elders from the APY Art Centres did massive paintings. So that went over there. So one of my mum's paintings there, my grandma's paintings is here in the Tarnandy Open Hands at the Art Gallery of South Australia. So for me, it's like having those 2 generations showcased both here in Adelaide and in France is amazing. But it was just, I mean, when we talk about COVID and when we talk about how hard people have worked, I mean, my elders have not worked harder, but also the staff that we work with across the APY lands, in our art centres, have done an incredible job with everything around the Untitled for Tarnandy in France. It's been incredible. There's paintings, there is new ways of thinking about works. You know, Robert Fielding's done some spheres, which is, he's putting like gold flecks through them. And so it's really, that innovation is there, but it's amazing. And I'm so proud of everyone who had a hand in it. But this particular one, this 2017 Untitled, is so striking and so incredible because it's talking about the Maralinga bomb, which is a nuclear bomb that was set off. Last year was the anniversary for 65 years. And it was set off in remote South Australia, and it impacted on the APY lands. It impacted on a lot of our communities, a lot of our family members. And so the way that it's positioned to make you feel like you're really small and that it's coming at you is, when we talk about Aboriginal leadership, or when, you know, the weaponry for Aboriginal men at that stage was spears, and, you know, they had to battle against a nuclear bomb, which will continue to devastate our country for a long time, you know, so yeah.
I think, and I think that the Coolarra Tilta project, when was started by some senior men, Hector Burton, who was my first boss in the community, another one of Sally's family members, and his brother Willie Kaika Burton, and it was about keeping this culture alive, but also making this cultural practice relevant and cool, I guess. And so it was the old men were smart. They knew that this was, well, this is an important cultural practice, and we need to innovate. We need to keep these young men genuinely interested in celebrating their culture. And also it was about supporting an economic model of a hand-to-hand cash payment that can happen in communities daily, which again, all of our program is about supporting improved health and wellbeing in communities and trying to impact the social challenge that Anangu face. And this is what art centres do. And the incredible artwork is a byproduct and a celebration of that. I mean, we all love the great art, but what the art returns to community and what it means for people having the economic driver in community, it's extraordinary. And that's the hook for all of us that work in this game. But the Coolarra Tilta project has turned into this incredibly powerful vehicle for contemporary storytelling. So each time with one of these major installation works, and they have, since they started, there's been installations that have ranged in scale from 300 spears to 1,500 spears, which is the work in Switzerland. And each time a group of senior male elders and young men get together and they talk about whose turn it is. They negotiate with each other. Whose turn is it to tell the story this time? What's the story going to be? They generally dedicate the work to one of the senior men, and often they remember a senior male leader that's passed away with it. This is in terms of men's and women's cultural practice. Men's and women's cultural practice is valued absolutely equally, and cultural law is respected equally, but cultural practice happens separately. And the interesting thing about this installation work was that it involved men and women. It was the first installation that involved men and women across the lands. So the bomb blast of the spears spoke directly to the Maralinga bomb test, and that was the British military that was testing those bombs in Australia, and there was a series of them in Maralinga and Emu Junction, and it was the smoke that blew across the APY lands and blinded people. And had all sorts of impacts, respiratory issues, and all the rest of these terrible impacts for Anangu. There was a lot of lives were lost. There was a leader in Mimili community called Mr. Yami Lester, who was an extraordinary political leader, both in the Indigenous world and the non-Indigenous world. He was an advocate and fought for his people who were injured from the bomb testing. These traditional bowls are called piti that are sitting below the bomb blast. They are made by women, and they're made from the roots of the trees or the trunks of the trees, and they're used for carrying water and food in the day, and babies. And so the men were talking about the blast, and then the women wanted to talk about the impact on the core elements of life. And for Anangu, water, you can imagine being in the desert, water, most of the paintings that you see in any Aboriginal gallery or in the context of Aboriginal work, the symbol of water, everything is about water and access to water and rock holes. But the women in this artwork were talking about the impact on one of the most vital elements of their country and their lives. So this work was a part of Tanandi in 2017. You can see with the installation works, there's lighting effects, there's soundscapes that go with the work. If you go on the Instagram, we love, the artists from the APY lands love the social media platforms. So if you do a search on the Coolarra Tilta project, you'll be able to see the various installations that have taken place. But you can see also these are a really amazing stage for performance elements. So generally, and that's another part that's so fantastic about Aboriginal art making. It's multidisciplinary work all the time. So every painting and every cultural practice has a song attached to it. It has a dance attached to it. It has a relationship with country that's very, very important. And then the more often we can bring these pieces together, the more powerful the work is for the artist. But as a art lover or audience, it's just, you feel like you're getting every piece of it together. It's amazing.
Yeah.
This is really astounding too. And you know, the success that you all are experiencing, that the artists are experiencing, I know that you'd be globetrotting right now were it not for COVID. Let's just put a pin in COVID and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But right now, a number of artists have been finalists in the Wynne and Archibald prizes, number of artists from the APY lands. And for our American audience, they might not know much about these art prizes, but this is hosted by the Art Gallery of New South Wales in Sydney. I'm not even sure how far they date back, quite a ways. And sorry, Sally?
99 years.
Okay, so there you go. And this is really the kind of perceived as, you know, the highest level of art, right? And there's three categories. There's landscape for the Wynne, and there's portraiture, and that's the Archibald, and then there's kind of a genre category, and that's the Solman.
That's right.
And so, but let's just talk about the Wynne to begin with. And I did put together a few slides. So because I know that Americans, when they think about landscape art, they think about something with a tree and maybe a little stream in it, and you know, a couple of people tiny in the distance. And I wish you would talk about how this is landscape, and also really what are we seeing here, you know, in terms of what the artist is trying to communicate through their artwork.
So when we talk about landscape, and when we talk about any of the paintings that the ladies of the artists do, it's quite often their jukupa, so it's something related to their ancestral creation stories, or it's a song line that travels through the lands. And so the Seven Sisters is a very prominent story for a lot of us, and Aboriginal people, not just here in Australia, Aboriginal people across the world have the Seven Sisters story. You know, it's the ladies that we see in the constellation. So for Numrity, what she's painted is the Seven Sisters, which is really, it's a place we have in the APY lands, and it's where the ladies have travelled through across the country, and the pit stops that they've made. But as you can see, it's, you know, there's one particularly on this painting, there's one sort of circle following the cluster of seven there, and it's the man, this Warinuru, who's, the best way to explain it is that he fell in love, he saw the ladies from the distance and fell in love with the youngest one. Sometimes it's the youngest, sometimes it's the oldest sister. But he fell in love and he wanted one of them to be his wives. And the sisters all had a very uncomfortable feeling about this bloke, and they were like, mm-mm. And they travelled across the country, and you know, and he followed them. He turned into river systems. He was a shapeshifter. He was a magic man. He'll turn into he turned into a tree, and the sisters were like, don't sit underneath the tree by yourself. Don't travel by yourself. Let's walk together. You know, when they went to a waterhole, he changed into a water serpent, all of this sort of stuff. And so the way Anangu artists paint is really from a bird's eye view. So looking at the country on that way, rather than here's a landscape of a tree a cassowary, or, you know, and you'll see that across Australia. There's actually different sort of styles of landscape painting from Aboriginal artists, but with the Archibalds, so it's technically called the Archibalds Win and Sulman. As APY artists, we've just changed it to the Win Prize. And what's been really amazing is that from when the Ken sisters won the Win Prize back in 2015, yeah, 15, it's now been won by an Aboriginal artist, and it's been pretty amazing to see that. And that's ownership of what is a landscape and how that's gone through. And so the Roberts Family Prize is the highly commended prize. And what was incredible about this year's Archibald for us was Vincent Namatjira, who's the grandson of the renowned Albert Namatjira, was the first Aboriginal person to win the Archibald. And so for all of us, it was an emotional day. It was excitement. It was finally seeing Vincent after years and years of being either highly commended or, you know, as a finalist, getting this recognition. It was like, it's cemented in history now. And it just hits you when an Aboriginal artist is the first to break that glass ceiling, you know. And for Vincent to do that, and someone that we work closely, it was incredible.
Let's look at a couple more of the finalists, because what is so interesting to me when you look at the whole page of finalists, how they are dominated by artists from the APY lands. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know, 8 or so of the finalists. And then I looked back several years, and that's a pattern that has been repeated for several years. So yes, you've had winners, but anybody who's a finalist is a winner. You know, this is such a select group.
That's right, Margaret. I think
This is very similar to the one you just showed us, right?
That's Leah. That's Leah. That's
Yes.
Mrs. Woody.
So I think the thing is in terms of, like, I think the museums in Australia, it's been a real time of change. And I think that if you place this in the global context of the Black Lives Matter movement and what's happening in Australia, you're seeing a new respect for First Nations culture globally. I think that's definitely what we're experiencing in Australia, but I think it's always been something. I think that Australia we experienced a first market boom in the Indigenous Western Desert art movement had a big boom in the early 2000s. But what's happened is, in that first market boom, the work was being, there was restrictions around the work. It wasn't being celebrated as stunning contemporary painting and connected with contemporary art on a national and international level, where that's what's changed this time around. Prior to today, Indigenous artwork in Australia people talked about the anthropological gaze, and it's sitting in a very much an anthropological space where it's regarded as a cultural document. The works even 10 years ago were being sold as the last of a dying language, where I think Aboriginal people and Sally's elders and the elders I work for have been very firm in, this language isn't dying. This language is very much being lived and being celebrated. And so you see, I think the thing that strikes me, and I see beautiful paintings every day of the week, but the thing that strikes me about these works is this diversity of aesthetic. You know, the diversity of aesthetic. We have dot paintings, we have wild brushworks, like this work of Margaret Richards. Margaret Richards is a woman in her late 70s. She started painting 18 months ago here in the Adelaide studio. She was desperate to start celebrating her culture and celebrating her stories here in Adelaide. And you can tell by her artwork, she paints with a vigorous energy. She paints like, we tease Margaret and say, you paint like you're on the run. And she is a prolific and exciting artist to work with. But it's the thing that we're most excited about during this time is that Indigenous artists and Indigenous artwork in Australia, and I think the amazing curators in the museums in Australia have supported Indigenous artists to hold their space and to hold opportunities, being celebrated as artists, not in a separate space as an other artist, but as an artist, as an artist to celebrate alongside artists from all cultural backgrounds in Australia. And this is the response to these changes has been something that we're so excited by and so proud of. But the Win Prize, since this new engagement with Indigenous artists, is something that I think all art lovers in Australia are really enjoying.
But also, I want to be a little bit ego-y. My elders and the artists that we have on the lands are so incredible and go for it. And they have this utter competition with each other, but also love for what they're painting. Like, so for us, so one of the artists always say, for us, bring it on, let's go. Where are we going next? What prizes, can we go for? Rather than sitting in the box of just Aboriginal works, it's actually going, no, we want that prize over there. We want that prize. We're going to break these glass ceilings. And, we are the best because these artists paint their country, and that connection to country is amazing. So it's really going, try and stop us now, and that's the energy that they have, and they have it for what they're doing, but they have it for me and my generation and the younger ones that are coming up, because a lot of them think, well, I've got a short time left, and I'm gonna pave this pathway for these young kids to follow, and I'm gonna go there. And we've got incredible staff that support that, but we're the top.
You are the top. And what people may not understand is just how recent this really is, because when I was in Fink in 1991 to 93, there wasn't a lot of painting going on the land. People were making bunu, and there was batik work. There were different art forms that communities were kind of focusing on, but the painting really came about 2003, 4, was that really when it was starting to develop? And how amazing to just take the world by storm with this, really contemporary art form that is so accessible as well.
So that's what I mean when we've, from 2015, so when the collective was started, when it was actually started to be driven by the artists, driven by these elders who said, really said, we are now in this driving seat. We know what we want to do. Support us to get there. So when you've had time and time again, other people micromanaging what you're meant to be doing, to then going, we know what we're doing. Just get us there. We'll help you, you help us, but we know where we're going to go. And that's when I talk about these are bosses. They are bosses in every sense. They are our community leaders. They are our cultural bosses. But then they also said, you know what? We're sick of other people making money off us. We're sick of there being only a short time when we can be celebrated. We're going to celebrate it all the time, and we're going to keep going and keep going.
So there was a big recognition very recently with the cover of Vogue magazine in Australia. Let's just look at that slide if we could, Charlotte. And I wanted to just give it a little bit of background, because this project that Vogue did was to engage artists for the cover of their magazine from all around the world. And it was intended to be a message of hope, during COVID times, a message of hope and healing. And my understanding is that the artist who painted this, Betty Muffler, is a healer, Anangu, is that right?
Yeah.
Sally, can you explain what that is? And also maybe just, can you tackle the question of, is artwork healing? Is it healing for the person who makes it? Is it healing for the people who view it?
Definitely. So Betty Muffler is one of the best Ngangkari. So Ngangkari is a traditional healer. You know, so they have powers to ward off sort of bad juju, but also in a space it's about healing you in all the time. And you know, Betty's one of my aunties, and for her, she's such, when you meet her, when you're in her presence, you feel so much better. It's that aura she has around you and her, and she's amazing. And with Betty, you know, obviously with COVID, you know, our community's going into lockdown, and you know, for her, she was like, well, I can't heal everyone, but I'm gonna work on my painting and heal this and heal my country. So I'm gonna try and heal my country through this. And so for her, you know, Betty always talks about the importance of being in Ngangkari, importance of that healing element. And so for her, she's fully about that. And when we talk about how painting is healing for everyone, you know, for your mental state of mind, when you can get into that space of actually just working and getting there. And these artists, for them, like when we talk about going back to country, for some of them, they might not necessarily be living on their country, so they go back when they're painting. And it's also when you see, like we've all, during COVID, I think we've all experienced the support that artists give us, whether it's musicians, whether it's actors, or whether it's visual artists. We've all turned to them to take our mind out of this pandemic. It's, you know, we've actually gone, okay, I need to watch something to take my mind off. I need to zone out and listen to some really beautiful music, or, you know, I need to look at this painting and feel that. And I think that's what these artists do all the time. They take you on a journey. And for Betty, it's incredible. I mean, we all know the importance of the September issue with Vogue. You know, as women, we know how, I mean, you have to watch it and to see that. And so for us, to see Betty's work, it was just, it was absolutely amazing. And she was so, and this is a project that was done with the National Gallery of Australia. And so, you know, with Betty's work, and it's just, Betty's also been only painting for the last few years as well. You know, for her main thing was being a Ngangkari, and you can see the way that Vogue and the National Gallery of Australia have put where the waterhole sort of symbol is as the O for Vogue. So it was really, really incredible in that sort of space. And it was just, I mean, this is what I mean, you know, APY artists are just going for it everywhere.
You know what? I might add something that's really pragmatic about, because of because there's been some conversation about the juju, and all of the healing qualities from Ngangkari. I mean, when you see Ngangkari in action, there's some things that Betty Muffler is known as a powerful Ngangkari. Sally's great grandmother Walia is also, and it's something that's very, very moving and very powerful, seeing that engagement on the lands. But I think if we're talking about feeling well and feeling well inside ourselves during challenging times, particularly with this year, you know, I want to talk about economic empowerment of art making for Aboriginal people in Australia. Like again, it goes back to this model where this is an environment where there aren't employment options. There's extreme disadvantage. So I'll tell you what makes you feel well: access to better food. Security makes you feel well. Being able to have some control in your life, where in an environment where the disadvantage can make things feel very chaotic all of the time, particularly this year. So I think, and that's the thing I love about the art centres, it's the artwork's absolutely gorgeous, and this work of that's being celebrated and acknowledged of Betty Muffler's is a wonderful example of that. But it's we have an elder that speaks about the artworks and makes the artworks, the painted works, feel three-dimensional rather than the two-dimensional works with the what non-Indigenous people can't see, Skye, is what's behind it, and that's the story that Anangu leadership like to speak to about with each painting. That's food hitting a family's table in an environment where food can be hard to come by. It's
iceberg lettuce costs $12, which is, I suppose, what is $17, $18 in American, you know, for lettuce.
Yeah, and that artwork behind you, Margaret, that Sharon Adamson, like her artistic talents and now supporting her to see the world and have a vision for a future that she couldn't have conceived of some years ago. So these art centres, the art is absolutely stunning and so powerful, and these achievements are wonderful. But again, what I'm most moved by and what the elders' focus is, what the art centres do in terms of impacting disadvantage and this positive impact on the ground every day of the week.
Well, I know we're getting close to the end of the hour, and I still have two more things I want to talk to you about. A lot more. I could talk for another hour with you all. You're wonderful. But okay, so one is that I know you have a big project with a New York City hotel. If you could just briefly talk about that, because that is economic empowerment for your artists, as you were just talking about, Skye. And then if you could wind up by telling the viewers, you know, how can they explore collecting art from the APY lands if they want to fill their COVID home full of beauty and healing? That would be a really great way to wind it up.
Okay, so the Wall Street project, there's an amazing hotel that's being built in New York, where the Pas-Bailey family that have the beautiful pearls and jewelry business in Australia and overseas as well. They have built a hotel in New York that will celebrate artwork from our region. So in each of the rooms, will profile different Indigenous artists. Betty Muffler is a part of this project, but I think it's an example of this project, and Margot, it's a model of best practice what this commitment has been through this family. They've reached out to us, and I think when we were first talking about this, Margot, I had to acknowledge, you know, it's New York City. It's not like there's a shortage of good art around, you know, and there would have been so many easier avenues to deal with this big project, but this family made the commitment have made a commitment in there to try and give back where possible, to try and support opportunities for economic empowerment for Aboriginal people, and they did so with this hotel by commissioning a large body of work for the hotel from our region. I think it's important, and this year and this time talks about supporting talks about supporting Black business and the importance of supporting economic opportunities, which is something that we're really which is something that's one of our core values. I think particularly in the Australian Indigenous art industry, do your research and make sure you are informed about the different models operating within our industry, because we want you to be happy with what you've supported by what you've bought. So it's the way to know that the money that you are spending on the beautiful work that you'll celebrate is hitting the sides of the community is to support Indigenous owned and governed art centres. You know, it's like we've spoken a lot today about the value of the role of art centres daily in community. We need these art centres, and it's not just the APY region, although do support the APY region. But support any art centre. There's beautiful work from the top end in Australia. There's beautiful Aboriginal work everywhere, but make sure you're supporting Aboriginal business when you're doing it, you know, so you know that the artist is being fairly paid, that the artist is working in a respectful and respected environment, and also that you know that the artist and the community are receiving the benefit of their hard work. And that's why the APY Art Centre Collective was to expand opportunities to make sure Indigenous artists are supported to maximise the benefit. So while you're looking at artwork, and Sally will tell you where to find us, do your research, support Aboriginal business wherever you can. But in the arts, it's the one place where it's a real opportunity. And like the Wall Street project, Margot, it's a time for people to take a risk, to make a brave decision. You know, supporting an Indigenous owned business. And like I said, it's in New York. They could have found lots of places to access their artwork. They went with us. They're thrilled. We've done a terrific job. The artwork is extraordinary. But what that money has meant for the communities during this year when exhibitions weren't possible, it's been an extraordinary project, and more projects like this need to happen. So I would encourage everyone to think about the ways you can support Indigenous business and Black business at the moment. It's the time for it.
I mean, definitely. Paskapaheli hotels, they've fully lent in. They fully went there. They said, yes, we're behind you 100%. And so, you know, in all of that, we went in as well. And, you know, when you have that support of actually going, we love what you're doing and we want to go with you guys, we went, brilliant, and we're going to show you the absolute best. And you know, for us, whilst Skye did say, you know, look at the top end, there's other incredible art regions, you know, the Kimberleys, you know, Arnhem Land, but you know, Central Australia has incredible works across the place. One of the places we work with a lot is Tarngajira, which supports artists in Alice Springs in a massive way. But for us, you know, as we've said before, our ladies love the social media. So, you know, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and on, you know, we've got an online website as well with our online gallery. So there's works on there as well. Just, you know, type in APY Gallery, APY Art Centre Collective, and you'll find us in all of those spaces. And it's just really, all of that just goes back directly to the artist, goes back to the art centre, goes back to the community. And at the end of the day, we're feeding the young kids and we're feeding the elders, you know. And so, you know, as a mum, you know, I'm very aware of how much nappies and all of that sort of cost. And so when you're living in a community where, you know, government support is very little, but also when your only general shop is selling, you know, the basic necessities at an inflated rate, everything goes like that. So for us, we're about putting money back into those communities and making sure that people just have something to live on. So Google us, find us. All the ladies love and have this thing whenever there's a photo of them on Instagram, they compare each other and say, well, I've got this many likes either on Instagram and Facebook. So go through the photos, go back, and that way the ladies will be like, see, I got that much more. So yeah, they love it all. So, but yeah.
Also, we make it fun.
Yes.
We make it fun. So start a conversation. Start a conversation about the paintings that you like. Ask a question. It's buying a painting and selling it. But buying a painting, everyone wins. The community wins, the artists win. Indigenous business wins.
And you win.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
The thing, you win, because you end up with an incredible painting that will live in your house, unless your children steal it and put it in their homes. So
with all the good juju,
with all the love and all, and then you end up with a little slice of APY in your house, and that's always great.
Oh, Apalia. Thank you so much. You have really opened up the door for us to understand Aboriginal art so much better and the work of the APY artists. You all are just amazing. Thank you so much. we will see you in New York.
Yes.
And also I want to just extend a invitation to come down to Kluge-Ruhe when you do come to New York, when you're able to travel.
Thank you,
We're here for
Margaret.
you and we want you to come. And I'm sorry we didn't get to talk about every topic, but we did cover quite a few of the topics that people raised in their questions ahead of time. And so thanks for all of those questions, and thanks for the people who have tuned in. You can contact Kluge-Ruhe at kluge-ruhe.org as well, and we can help to connect you to people in Australia like Skye and Sally and others as well. So we really appreciate your time today, and you know, all of the wonderful things that you have shared. It really will stick with me for a long, long time. And thank you for the work you're doing. It's so important.